Question number 3, consequentialism. What are the 3 lessons of the snakebite and lifeboat cases that consequentialism attempts to take seriously? So the snakebite and lifeboat cases, these were 2 cases where you have a choice. You can either save one person from a serious harm, or you can save a bunch of people from that same kind of harm, or you can do nothing. And in each of those cases, it seems you should save the many rather than save only the one or save none. So 3 lessons that seem to emerge from that result. The first we called others matter. And this is the idea that the well-being of others and not just our own well-being matters morally. So this is sort of a rejection of ethical egoism. The second idea was that production matters. And what we meant by that was that producing or promoting the well-being of others makes a difference to what we should morally do. So others matter. That idea is that the well-being of others matters. But that leaves open the question of exactly how we should relate to the well-being of others. And that second idea, production matters, is saying the way we should relate to the well-being of others is by promoting it or producing it. The third idea is one we called more is better. And that's the idea that we should produce as much of it as possible, produce as much well-being as possible. We have more moral reason to produce more benefit than to produce less benefit. All right, next bit. What is basic consequentialism? That's a pretty simple rule. Basic consequentialism says every person is always morally required to do whatever is going to bring about the most total well-being in the world. Third sub-question. In what way exactly does basic consequentialism respect the idea that humans are moral equals? So what you want to say here is this. According to consequentialism, when morality adds together all of the well-being that would be produced by a certain action, it doesn't give some people's well-being more weight than anyone else's, right? So 10 units of benefit for you counts the same as 10 units of benefit for me. And consequentialism in this way is impartial. All right, next sub-question. Explain in detail 2 of the objections to basic consequentialism discussed in class. Be sure to include a case to illustrate each objection. So we talked about 5 objections to consequentialism, and you can pick and choose whichever of these you want. I'll go through these real quickly. I'll state the objection, and I'll give an illustrative example. So the first objection was that there's no place for moral constraints in the consequentialist framework. So it seems to be wrong to use people in certain ways, even when using them in those ways would bring about the most total well-being. And we had a couple examples in class. One of them was this transplant case. This was the case where you could kill a healthy patient, take their organs, and save the lives of 5 people by doing so. So consequentialism here would say you're required, actually, to kill the healthy patient to save the 5, but it seems intuitively wrong to do so. It seems like there are moral constraints against using people that way, even when doing so would bring about the greater good. All right, second objection is that there's no place for moral options. So the first objection was about moral constraints. Second objection is about moral options. And the idea here is that it seems okay to at least sometimes do things for oneself, even though choosing to do that thing isn't going to produce the most total well-being. So the example we had in class was one where you choose to go to the movies instead of going to volunteer at a homeless shelter during that time. Supposing that going to the homeless shelter would bring about more total well-being, then consequentialism would say it's wrong for you to go to the movies. But it seems like morality permits us to sometimes exercise these kinds of moral options and privilege our own well-being. Third objection is that there's no place for fairness in the consequentialist framework. So we mentioned just a moment ago that consequentialism does treat people as moral equals in one way, and that it weights everyone's well-being equally. But it ignores fairness when it comes to how things are distributed. The example we had in class was this case where a bunch of us are shipwrecked, and you have to choose how to distribute the chocolate bars. So you've got two options. One, you could distribute them fairly and give everyone an equal number of chocolate bars. Or, because there's one person who takes more pleasure out of a single chocolate bar than the rest of us, you could bring about the most total well-being by giving all the chocolate bars to that one person. Consequentialism is going to say you should give all the chocolate bars to the one person, but that seems wrong, precisely because it seems unfair. So that was objection number 3. Objection number 4 is that there's no place in the consequentialist framework for so-called special obligations. So morality seems to say that we have special obligations towards some people that we don't have towards others. An example we gave in class was one where you promised your daughter that you'll pay her college tuition, and imagine that you could send her to college for $100,000, or you could use that $100,000 to send 2 strangers to college, each of whom have received a half ride to college. So consequentialism seems to imply that you should send the strangers to college rather than your daughter. But common sense morality would seem to say not just that it's okay to send your daughter to college, but that you ought to send your daughter to college rather than send 2 strangers. And then finally, the 5th objection had to do with the fact that there doesn't seem a place for things like desert or forfeiture in the consequentialist framework. So in the example, well, we had a couple examples in class. One of them involved an attacker who breaks in to the room. He's going to break the legs of an innocent person, and you can prevent him from doing this only by killing him. So it seems permissible to kill the attacker, even though by killing them you would do more harm than you would prevent. Whereas consequentialism is going to say, well, precisely for that reason, it would be wrong to kill the attacker. You should always bring about the most total well-being. And in this case, you would bring about the most total well-being by allowing the attacker to break someone's legs rather than by killing the attacker.